Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you here today. Please join us on the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page and the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. We've got a lot of places where I am now. We're on X, also at Santita J and the Santita Jackson Show. And I'm finally on Blue Sky, everybody. Can you believe it? That's right. At santitajackson.bsky.social. How about that? But please, everybody, share the show. Share the show. We are in quite a season, this Christmas season, for many of us who are in the movement. The Christmas season has meant many things to us. You know, we are church people, we are religious people, and so it's a season of joy. It's a season of contemplation. Jesus is the reason for this season for all of us. But it was forever changed for us in 1969 when Mark Clark and Chairman Fred Hampton were assassinated by the order of our government. We need to talk about it. We can't talk about that enough, because if we don't really fully comprehend it and understand it, we will repeat it. And we need to talk about that. We need to talk about who Chairman Fred Hampton Sr. was and is, what the goals were and are, and why we're still working today. But we also need to go back to that moment and see what happened, because it was a time that was fraught with a lot of anxiety and fear. I mean, you can imagine. You had Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who'd been killed April 4th of 1968. Oh, we can go back to John F. Kennedy in 1963. You can go to Jimmy Lee Jackson. You can go to Malcolm X. You can go to the Four Little Girls. I mean, what a season that was. And then you had Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and you had Bobby Kennedy. I mean, so much just people. I don't know how people got through that moment. I really don't. And then December 9th, almost as a coda, a period to that moment, to the 60s. December 9th, 1969, I'll never forget it. I was getting ready. I was waiting to be driven to school. And the television was taller than I was at the time. And I'm standing there, a little confused, because they're talking about someone who we knew, who I had seen at the breadbasket meetings, who we had seen at picnics, who we had talked to. And because he was kind of young, he was kind of hip for us. So, you know, he was Fred for us. And they said he had been killed. And immediately those of us who were in the movement knew that something was amiss. They said it was a shootout. We knew that the Black Panthers believed in self-defense, to be sure, but they were nonviolent. If you have a meal at school today, it is because of the Black Panthers. That was their idea, and it was what they implemented. Thank you, Fred Hampton, Chairman Fred Hampton. Thank you, Huey Newton. Thank you, Bobby Seale. Thank you, Bobby Rush. Thank you. Because they're the ones who did that. They're the ones. And so you knew something was wrong, and then you found out, thank you, G. Flint Taylor, the attorney for Fred Hampton and your family. 100 bullets, 99 of them going into the building. Oh my gosh, what happened? Well, it was a raid. And so we're going to talk about that, because we need to understand what happened, because it's still with us. Defending Rights and Dissent, a civil liberties and civil rights group out of Washington, D.C., have had an ongoing lawsuit for years, because they wanted to know about the FBI informant who was embedded in the Black Panthers, who helped to engineer the assassination of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark. And they just won the lawsuit, and there's 7,000 pages on William O'Neill, or is it William Neal, who was inside of the organization, he became a brother, and he set them up to be killed. There's 7,000 pages, 1,000 have been released. We want the 6,000 other pages and whatever else they've got. We need to know these things. We need to know them now because people are asking a lot of questions and they should. Dwight McKee, Dr. D, we're so excited that he is with us even as he is recovering, and we're so glad that he is with us. But he's been integral to this story and intimately involved because he knew Chairman Fred Hampton. He had worked with him. And he also went to look for Bobby Rush to try and save his life because the FBI were still in pursuit of him, trying to kill him. But we're very honored to have this young man with us today, um, someone of whom we are enormously proud because thanks to his father's example and his mother's hard work and the wonders and beauties of his family, he has grown up to be a tremendous leader in his own right, a magnificent tribute to his mother and his father, Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. I could just cry. I'm so excited to see you. And of course, he is the chairman of the Black Panther Party Cubs. Now, you know, that's too rich for me. I said, now I love that. But I love it. I love it. I love it. And I see you got those dimples like your dad. I love it. This is
Yeah,
too
right
rich.
on, right on.
It's good to see you. Good to see you.
Good to
Chairman
see,
Fred Hampton Jr.
good to see you as well, my sister. Good to see you as well. Good to be here. Uh, this time is date 55 years later
Mm-hmm.
after the events you spoke about, the assassinations of Chairman Fred the Fifth, Mark Clark. If I can just touch on a few points that you made. One, uh, contrary to like the narrative, the incorrect narrative that a lot of people put out, like Black Panther Party, particular revolutionaries are just um, going out on this rah reactionary move. You made a point in regards to self defense. I just want to reiterate something that you mentioned about self defense.
Mm-hmm.
A lot. The initial name of the Black Panther Party, ironically, was the Black Panther Party for self defense,
Mm-hmm.
and it should be noted that it's intentional that the narrative is put out that our black people in particular, that that they're on this mission, that they're just going out on this looking for drama, and I tell people, like, even in some law enforcement training, they say they're trained when they're beating you, they say stop resisting, even if you're not even resisting. And this is I just want to just put this so we just struggle to put not only this in context what happened December 4th, 1969, but the history of African people, of black people, in regards to what has been, what is happening to us, the warfare that's been waged on us, whether it be through the bullet, through chemical, biological warfare, aka various forms of drugs, narcotics, poverty, and a myriad of other different dynamics. Um, and as speaking of hunger, I'm also mention hunger. The first free breakfast programs, the Black Panther Party started these programs, and
Mm-hmm.
these were survival programs, not seen as charity, but implemented to get the people involved in fighting for their own self determination. And when the people would come through and they would support these programs, endorse these programs, and subsequently the Black Panther Party would turn these programs over to the people. And I come into contact with people to this day that talk about how the free breakfast program, the free busing programs, the prison, the free clothing program, how they impacted them, how they instilled that dynamic of self-determination. And I met people who have been, we use the term demoralized as opposed to saying they're strung out on drugs or there's a hype or something like that. Just the mere mention of that era of time, you can see the life come back into them. And with that being said, a logical response would be like, well, why wouldn't the government um, acknowledge them, or so give them credit, and support these the work that these organizations are doing? But nothing. But the reality is, they became under intense attack of our official program entitled the COINTELPRO, the Counterintelligence Program.
What do you know about that moment? I could so much love and respect and appreciation to your mother.
Yeah.
She
Yes.
literally survived that.
Yes.
And your father loved her so that he shielded her and that, took the hit to save your life and to save hers. What do you know about that moment, if you want to talk about that?
I think we should talk about it. I'm glad you even asked me if I want to talk about it. I think it's something in our communities, regardless of age. I think I know it's not a popular discussion or it's not a safe subject, but it's something that we in our community become comfortable with acknowledging. In fact, I think I was mentioning the other day in Nazi Germany, it is said if a person doesn't talk about the atrocities of what happened in Dachau, in Auschwitz, in the gas chambers, they view it as child abuse to not talk about those contradictions.
Mm.
We have to start acknowledging these contradictions occur in our community. Uh, Excuse me. Can you hear me all right? Is that background noise?
Absolutely, you
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
It's ever developing what I'm learning. I'm not only with the life, but the assassinations, the attack um, on the Black Panther Party, which is a microcosm of what
Hmm.
happens to our people in general. It's ever developing again about the details uh, in which the government, the extent the government went to, and even prior to December 4th, that uh, it's, the government recognizing our potential before many of us even recognize our own potential.
Hmm.
It's, placed a wiretap on my grandparents' telephone when he was before he was Chairman Fred. It was when he's Fred happened, and he's a teenager. In fact, his FBI file, as well as Mumia Abu Jamal, who's a present-day political prisoner,
Hmm.
and was the Deputy Minister of Information for the Philadelphia branch of the Black Panther Party. The FBI files were initiated when they were about 14 years old, 14 years of age. In fact, when they called for the wiretap on Chairman Fred, the DC Bureau of the FBI thought it was a typo. They said he could not be this young. How he organized and took the junior NAACP, so took that membership about 300 members in a short time span. Different war stories about how he challenged the contradiction in regards to not being any black swimming pool facilities for no swimming pool facilities for black children in Maywood, where he grew up at. Even in high school, challenging the country about no black homecoming queen. So,
But, and he did that. I must say, I want people to remember because we had George Bliss, your family friend, on, who
yes,
was a classmate at Proviso East, which is this is very Leave It to Beaver, everybody.
good
And
point.
when you see Chairman Fred in his plaid shirt and cardigan, having organized these white and black, a multiracial rainbow coalition at this school, and they were all working with him, and they will tell you today they are the first who, when they heard the news that he had been in a shootout and had been killed, they didn't believe it. They said, no, 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 not our Fred. No,
Hmm.
we know him.
Hmm.
And I don't think that people know that side of him.
Yeah,
Maybe that's why he was so feared,
yeah.
because he had such appeal across racial boundaries. Hmm?
That was a major part, no doubt about it. And I appreciate the fact that we try to even put it in context of timing also, because
Mhm.
like I recall being on the movie set for Judas and the Black Messiah, and I said, I don't know if this generation is going to grasp the significance of a free breakfast program. And someone said, why do you think? I said, well, right now people can order Grubhub or Uber Eats or whatever, but it is important to put in context the timing. And I'm again ever developing. I hear Ward, saying how he impacted people's lives even prior to the Black Panther Party, and then being drafted to the Black Panther Party, and his organized abilities. And also, to put in context, the city of Chicago, which for all practical purposes was remains to be the top segregated city in the country. So the race question as well as the class is deep in Chicago. So to be able to cross those lines, to transcend those lines and still maintain who he was a phenomenal feat. Um, with the assassination, it was people stuff information that's not even in books. the people are still they steady. I mean, they laying out more and more information. The Black Panther Party said information is raw material for new ideas. I have my ear to the ground. I listen to the brothers and sisters out there. I learned from those who are locked up with them, in prison with them. I heard about even how when law enforcement came, they cut off all the lights on the west side of Chicago. How they were armed with a floor plan of the apartment so detailed they even knew a pack of cigarettes might likely be at. And this is important to know because a lot of times our people are told that we're not that important. That, for the government to have any surveillance on us, to watch us, you're paranoid, you're tripping, so on and so forth. But they come in and block, and they come in Illinois Bell phone trucks, block the entire block off. They come in like a strategic strike. And prior to this, there were attempts to take him from the street. There were the infamous letters where the government had sent to various organizations. One in particular to then on the Blackstone Rangers, who later became the Black Stone Nation, where the government had attempted to create antagonistic situations. Where they would send letters to then leadership Jeff Ford, saying that the Black Panther Party should take over your neighborhood, so on and so forth. And work out these, communicate to these brothers and sisters, and win from certain points of unity. It's even documented how the government had went to the vice lords, a major street organization on the west side of Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
and propositioned them that they would get them a certain portion of the west side if the Black Panther Party would not be able to open a free medical center on 16th Street. Chairman Fred won them to some points of political unity. I was a former political prisoner. And unfortunately, from the same place that Chairman Fred was at, I actually met individuals who had planned to take out Chairman Fred for the prison administration. When Chairman Fred talked to them on the prison yard in Menard, they told the warden, "Hey, we on Chairman Fred's security now. Anything happen to him, we hold you accountable for." He was released, or we say unleashed, on appeal bond August 13th, 1969, with that same revolutionary fervor, if not more, hitting the ground consistently. And as we know, the government they resorted to that, uh, for lack of a better term, that final solution to take them out. And again, armed with a floor plan so detailed they didn't even know a pack of cigarettes might likely be at. And actually, when the bullets were coming out, they shot and assassinated 22-year-old defense captain Mark Clark. The shells coming through the house, my mother to be, she felt the shells coming in the mattress. And actually, actually she covered down over Chairman Fred. This is her comrade. This because she seen he was moving unusually slow, if moving at all. It was later exposed, as we did the independent autopsy, that they placed enough Seconc knockout drugs inside his Kool-Aid the night prior to technically knock a horse out.
Oh my God.
She covered down over him. When they brought her out of the room, they put the Chicago police placed a pistol to her pregnant belly. She's 8.5 months pregnant. This is December 4th. She just turned 19, matter of fact, November 28th, days prior. And when I speak about it, I draw the correlation that the first piece of steel that I ever came in contact with, as opposed to Dr. Stethoscope, was the Chicago Police Department's revolver. And that was my prenatal care. And they took out a room and they went inside the room and they fired several more shots. And those are the fatal shots that took out Chairman Fred. To add insult to injury, they criminalized the victims. They took their Mr. Health, Ronald Doc Satcher, and other survivors out. They paraded them out and they locked them up. They gave them trumped up charges. And this was what we refer to as the massacre on Monroe, the west side of Chicago.
Dwight McKee, what do you remember from that moment, about that moment?
How stunning it was, and how overwhelming it was. Because what had happened is that the FBI and the media had taken these photos of the Panthers in California going into the state legislative building with guns. And they had used that picture to create a narrative that this was a violent group of young men. But the fact of the matter is, they were proponents of the Second Amendment,
Mm.
that you had the right to carry arms and protect yourself. And it wasn't in the abstract because they were protecting themselves from police departments that made their living by violating their civil rights. arresting them, and in some situations, killing them. And so it is very easy to see how people and some black people sided against them, assuming that they were violent people. Now, interesting enough, the programs they created were some of the most viable and necessary programs in the community. They they created free breakfast programs and free medical programs, but they were promoted by the media as free loader programs rather than free press programs. And what was left out of the equation is how much of black people's money was being used to sustain white developers and and white millionaires and white billionaires. Is that the money we had that was put aside as TIF money to develop black community was all being redirected into the white community and for white wealth. And when you look at the effects of that today, you see that they did a survey, did a study, and found out that the gap between white wealth and black wealth was the average white family had about $250,000 in white wealth, and the average black family had zero wealth because all that money was being redirected. And so the people they were feeding, the kids they were feeding, needed to be fed. It was plain, they were paying a toll for going to school hungry. I went to school in the days of the Willis wagon, and they had put us in house trailers. And we went to school 4 hours a day and had basically no books and no real progressive education because they didn't want to build new schools for us. And I guess it didn't matter because they ended up closing the schools anyway. But that part of the discussion wasn't made that much. It was that these guys are creating freeloader programs for undeserving children and giving free health care to drug addicts. And so the narrative was always misaligned,
Mm.
and the kids were all devalued.
Chairman Fred, how how did you come to know your father growing up?
I I'm paraphrasing, but I had said in the poem I wrote one time. I say, um, a lot of people want to know how does it feel to be sired by you, being loved by the people but sweated by the you know who. If I had my choice, do it all again, I would choose to be your son. And by the way, Daddy, the lady that you chose, that was the one. And it was I learned through theory and practice. You know, I think I position that we position that you can grasp so much information just by reading. But we struggle to where to marry theory and practice. I've been in situations where literally I've had encounters with some of the offspring of some of the offspring of different programs, the leadership that he talked to, and I grew up. Fortunate and unfortunate, I grew up in the city
Mhm.
where not a lot of things have not changed. In particular, one period of time, the names have not even changed. You know what I'm saying? The Daily Machine, I'm talking about in particular. It was under the tenure of Mayor Richard Daley, in which Chairman Fred, the physical Mark Clark was assassinated. I was legally lynched under the tenure of Mayor Richard Daley, the junior. And I recall being out on appeal bond. I was going through old Black Panther Party newspapers, and I came across a name. I said, "Whoa, wait a minute! I said, this is who is this?" It was a Sergeant Joseph P. Grubezek, and I said, "Wait a minute! This is the one that was in charge of all the law enforcement." And they gave me a case, and lo and behold, he was involved in the surveillance and subsequent assassination of Chairman Fred. So I'm constantly learning. And through the work, I just learned. I just learned. We just had this 55th year we refer to as International Revolutionary Day, December the
Mhm.
4th. A brother who grew up with him was telling me about when my Fred, before he was chairman, how he went to Grand Rapids, Michigan, organized all these youth and to put together a proposal for a vote to change the name from National Advancement for Social and Colored People to that of Black people. And so the classroom was like the community is like a classroom for me. I learned through other people how the response, and the information they give me, and through again through similar work. Walk, as we say, not walking in the footsteps, but the path of Paul steps of such forces as Chairman Fred. So again, the schoolrooms reading, but also in practice with our programs. We have the community refrigerator right in front of the house. He grew right in front of the house, the Hampton House. We have we had a free breakfast program, and I would see I met people who come and say we this was some of the struggles that they endured. You know what I'm saying? So it's a continuous educational process.
Mhm. We're talking with the chairman, Fred Hampton Jr., about the life and legacy of his father, of his mom, of Mark Clark, the Black Panther Party. So much that we've got to continue to discuss because I mean, he lived through history. Dwight McKean became part of it. Dwight, in real time, were the did you know that the Black Panthers were considered to be so dangerous, quote unquote?
Well, I understood how you were projected, but because um, I also knew about the FBI and the programs that they had,
Hmm.
Pro and Tail Pro, we knew that there was conspiracy and plots to misrepresent who they actually were. And I was actually exposed to the breakfast programs and saw the kids eating in the morning at some of the churches in High Park that they ran the programs through. And so, no, I was not surprised or shocked. One thing you should know, Chairman, is that after the assassination, who was conducted by Fred Hanrahan, who was a state's attorney, was opting to become the mayor of Chicago, who your dad used to call Hammerhead Fred, Hammerhead Hanrahan, is that I ran into him at a store on 87th Street.
Oh wow.
And he talked to me and he told me, he said, nobody's heard my side of the story. So I said, well, I set up for the black community to hear what you got to say. So your father was a chairman of the NAACP Youth Division. And I was the chair of the Operation Red Basket and Operation Push Youth Division.
Hmm.
And so I invited him to a meeting we were having. At the meeting, he disclosed that the FBI set him up to do the assassination, and they had given him misinformation about the Panthers, and they had misrepresented what danger they were to the black community and the white community, and that they had, whether true or not, that they had manipulated him into conducting this assassination. And then when he thought about it, he had us take the tape off, cut the tape off, because he knew he couldn't say that in public. But this was a real conspiracy to murder and to assassinate.
Did you know in real time that the press were not telling you the truth?
Did I? Yeah, we knew in
You,
real time that they had shot 100 bullets in the building, and he had only shot back one time. There were certain things that wasn't adding up, and we had been part, me and some of the black men pushing from Breadbasket. We had been part of a little group that had gone out to try to get Bobby Rush before they assassinated him.
tell us about that.
When we drove up and down the west side trying to find Bobby and protect him from the police, some of the guys with me was part of the African American Police Patrol, they had a group. And so these guys, some ex-military, some ex-police, and with me who was young, went out to try to find Bobby before they were to kill him because he was on the list too. And what happened was some of the other guys from Breadbasket was able to catch him before they shot him, put him in the trunk of the car, and drive him to the Reverend Jackson's house and let him out and turn him in at the Saturday morning meeting so the community could see that he was unharmed and they'd have a point of reference if anything happened to him.
Chairman Fred, I mean, when I hear these stories, it is just amazing to me because these people became fugitives in their own city. I mean, this is still on paper the most segregated city in the United States. Chicago is.
Mhm.
Just as you moved through that, and I mean, as you see where we've been, I mean, your programs are as relevant today as they were 50, 60 years ago.
Mhm.
The work is ongoing.
Mhm.
I mean, we need you more than we don't even know how much we need you. Help me to understand what it is that you are seeing now. Do you think that we've grown? Do you think we've gotten smaller? I mean, what have our problems gotten bigger?
Let me preface with this. In regards to need, is the relationship or the need is reciprocal. We need the people also because as the Minister U.E.P. Newman said, without the people, change revolution is impossible. It's tug and pulls. It's highs and lows in regards to struggle. That's what and you think about the significance of protracted struggle. A quote from Malcolm X. He said one of the quotes was, "The collective consciousness of the people ticks slowly, but it erodes to the volcanic force that make Mount St. Helens look like nothing." There are different degrees. There are times when I go through intense battle fatigue. And there are times when we get a charge. I get a charge from people that, what I'm saying, this campaign, this is doing it. Highs and lows, and the deal is to remain consistent, and recognize the core issue. What I'm saying, the core contradiction in regards to what I'm saying was though like coronavirus. It may be dormant at times. It may go. It may settle down. It may morph into different dynamics. Might be intense. It's similar to the system. Similar to capitalism. It's forever. It's consistently, and and there are times right now. For example, contradictions being exposed within the music industry. This is nothing new. This is just the history of the music industry. But
Mhm.
we have to be consistent in laying this out, and also as servants of the people, continuously hiding these contradictions, being willing, whatever comes out, even the good, the bad, and different, to be able to sum it up politically, what's going on. And we have to struggle for that because, we can become emotional, and we should not negate our emotions. But Chairman Fred would say revolution is a scientific art that must be perfected. And objectivity, like a lot of times people say, well, I don't understand why you always say, like Chairman Fred, just say the police killed my daddy. And I say, I struggle. That in a sense, that kind of devalues the significance of what happened. Him being Chairman Fred does not take away from him being my father, my grandparents' son, or my mother, or Cool and Jerry's husband and comrade. But to put in context, Mr. Kid pointed out earlier how the thing the situation about Hanrahan, who was a Cook County State's attorney, and yes, he was Mayor Daley's political water boy. He was set to be the next mayor of Chicago, and the state, the government, of course, they want to like. They give us our task. There's a few bad police. He just done this wrong. They don't want. They does not want us to know there was an orchestrated system, or a program put together to wipe us out. And if we know that, we can look at a number of ways. We can become demoralized and broken, or we can say, wait a minute, who are we? That this someone is going to the extent to do this, to send us this sort of music, or this, who are we, the type the miseducators, who are we that they would concertedly white obliterate or malign the legacy of such organizations, the Black Panther Party? Why don't we know? Why is there such a fact of us even talking about who we are? And that we have to acknowledge that it emboldens us to put stuff. Well, a lady across the street from the Hampton House, it's a school that Chairman Fred went. The school he went to, Irvin Elementary School, is still there. And though when we got to the Hampton House, those children didn't know who Chairman Fred was. After we were there, one of the parents said, because of you all, those children have to have bigger shirt sizes now. I said, why is that? She said they be walking through the hallways with their chest up, saying this is probably his locker, this is probably his desk. They'll say to be able to relate to not this role model, but this real model.
And we have to look at the impact that some of these programs had on the country. The free breakfast program became for Bush No Child Left Behind.
Mm.
And the free health program really helped lead into Medicare, some the elements of Medicare. And so these programs had terrific impacts on the nation, but it also has some negative impacts. I remember that your uncle, who loved his brother,
Mm.
actually had a nervous breakdown and would spend nights in the airport or O'Hara because he could not deal with the fact that his little brother had been murdered the way he'd been murdered,
Mm.
as he tried to carry the legacy of his departed brother. And so the impact has been both positive and negative.
Wendy
Well,
Mandela,
oh, please don't go. So,
Wendy Mandela has said something that even when a person is in prison, it's not just the prisoner that does the time, not just the prisoner that does the time. The impact is, I mean, on our communities, our families. No one leaves out of this clean, and this they search out for generations, generations. They search, the impact on a family, and that's I'm glad to point out the different, because a lot of times we look at struggle in a reactionary sense, like it's just the individual. I can't tell you. I mean, I how many situations, and ongoing, like, the targeting of people, of my counterparts, Tupac Shakur and so many others, you know what I'm saying? So it's important to note that and you're not to take when you take a stance, you have to acknowledge that, you know what I'm saying? And that's something you kind of touched on some things that I think back, like, because people say, well, who asked for this? And so I'm clear, when you step out there, the repercussions that come down. But our people, we have to really, I mean, be able to distinguish a war from revolution. A
mhm.
war, you have your different occupying armies, they suit up and they boot up and get out. But a revolution, you gain the mass and participation of the mass of the people. And, and we have to, the stuff, dynamics such as that, of the targeting of whole communities. You look, actually, even the places with the Black Panther, I was talking to Brother Newt, the nephew of Minister U.E.P. Newton and the son of Melvin Newton. We was in West Oakland. This is before we got the Hampton House. And I remember talking about how every place in Baltimore, Oakland, California, every place the Black Panther Party was at, it was they salted the earth. They flooded it with drugs. That particular every area, I mean, specifically, they flooded with narcotics. In fact, on Monroe, where Jimmy Fair was assassinated at, they had flood. I talked to the brothers about 30 years ago, and they stopped hustling over there. The Hampton House. At one point, we had to go clean house. They were trying to assault the earth with that, and that's something this system it thinks long range. We have to acknowledge, and it transcends geographical, gender, and generational lines. The attacks that come on our families, our loved ones, and the people in general.
You know, I want to know, just given all that we have seen from our past, Chairman Fred and Dwight McKee, because we still disbelieve. I mean, now it seems to me, let me start with you, Dwight. After the Obama presidency, now we believe in the FBI, even though we have our history is replete with people they have killed or destroyed. I mean, something has happened with the black community to white. And I would say that, Chairman Fred, to the upper class black community, middle class on up. Because if, I mean, Dwight McKee,
Yes.
because we have gone from, I guess, in that moment in 1969, trusting the FBI was something we did not do. And I saw that through the 70s and 80s. But now we do.
Well,
What's going
the
on?
good thing is Trump is going to change all of that because his experience, he's been exposed to the contradictions of the FBI, and he's going to expose the contradictions, and not just what he did to him, but what he's done to other people, and his association with Kennedy is going to be a real shock to a lot of people when they let these other records go, and we find out that we met the enemy, and the enemy was us.
Mm.
Is that there was a plot to murder and assassinate American citizens. We're going to be very surprised when we find these things out through Trump. Obama, to his discredit, was a real child of the elite and a believer in the American way, in American uh,
Imperialism.
mythology,
Hmm.
imperialism.
Hmm.
And he'll carry out some of the same policies for the American government that they'll be that I carried out for the American government. And so he actually did to um, uh, the president of Libya,
Mm. Gaddafi.
Gaddafi, the same thing that Hanram had done to Chairman Fred. So you have to be very careful how you process that regime.
Chairman Fred, as you are talking to young people, I mean, as you are really helping to, one of the things that I do that is so wonderful to me is that I'm seeing you organize. And it's like, well, you know what? There you go. You are doing just what your father and mother have done. In this environment in which, see, it's because it's hard to believe the FBI started a file on your father at 14. And my mother, when I told her I was going to have you on, or even when I was going to talk about your father, she said, let people know how young he was and how serious he was as someone who was barely a man. She said, but he was more man at 21 than most people are at 70. I mean, he saw a world where things were wrong and he was working to change it. He was working to change those things. How do we bring young people along today, Chairman Fred?
I think you look at different dynamics and you say, okay, you put even that time period, for example. the late 1960s, terms and acknowledgement of such realities as the draft. When many people a lot of people are not familiar with the draft. There was a common, so the law enforcement kicking through your door, telling you either go to war and fight, or go to jail. And this time period is the conditions create a certain, and also play a role with impacting certain discussions. And that was a revolutionary period. But in regards to how do we deal with it, we have to put our ear to the ground as organizers. And some people deal with the world from an idealism point. I have a certain amount of idealism, but I'm guided by first thing taking an assessment of the reality, what's going on. Minister U.E.P. Noonan said that power is the ability to define phenomena and make it act in a desired manner. Power is the ability to define phenomena and make it act in a desired manner. Phenomena is an unusual event that can be scientifically explained. We've had cases like that of the late great Reverend Nat Turner, who was a realist. He put his ear to the ground. He said, what's phenomenal? What is everyone engaged in? The church. He said, okay, man, praise the Lord past admonition. Harriet Tubman, she put her ear to the ground. She seen what they referred to as the Negro spirituals was a phenomenon. She defined it and they utilized it for liberation of our people. And even what other people say, some people look at the world what they want it to be. When Chairman Fred, when he organized, talked to the young patriots on different dynamics, a lot of people say you shouldn't talk to this group, you shouldn't talk to their gang members, they racist, so on and so forth. He was a realist. He put his ear to the ground and said, okay, what points of unity can I bring these forces to? Dealing with the acknowledge good, bad, and different. Because there's so many instances we try to say, well, I don't want to hear about that. And that's cool, or that can suffice if you're an individual. But when you're speaking for the people, that's a different dynamic. That term, a service of the people. It's an old African axiom that says something like, what's good for the family may not be good for the community. What's good for the community is good for the family and the community. So that does the greater good. So I remember backstage years back, Waka Flocka, talking to him, and the person with him asked me, say, how do you be talking to these different youngsters? He said, I see you go backstage with these rappers, you be on stage. He say, how do you deal with that? The brother with him. I said, listen, I'm not dealing with Aquafina water. I gotta deal with the good, the bad, and ugly. When I go to a different city, I ask them what type of narcotics are these youngsters on. You know what I'm saying? I study the people. Richard Pryor, I like this term. Richard Pryor says he's a peopleologist. We have to study the people, and don't come in with a subjective what we want it to be. Take into account those different dynamics. In struggle, any dynamics, something that may be seen as minimum is weather. Is weather. Is it cold? How do people relate to this? What's their turn? We're on the south side, west side. What are these young people engaged in? What type of narcotics? How does the various forms of chemical, biological warfare, type of drugs? A lot of people think these children out here still smoking marijuana. They have no idea about the Percocet and the fentanyl that's going. You know what I'm saying? We have a whole campaign called the Black Panther Party Club Code of Culture. Well, we intentionally take, you know what I'm saying, we're artists at certain points of unity. We have the educational ethic. We get students to work on cases for political prisoners. So we have to meet them where they at and bring them certain points of unity.
I'm just trying to find out where we go from here. Because so much is going on. I mean, so much. I want you to come back to the show because we've got a lot of work to do. Because when I'm listening to you, Dwight McKee, when I see him, and not to talk around you, Chairman Fred, but I see your dad, who was not my contemporary. He was Dwight McKee's contemporary, but I see him in my mind's eye. I saw him at Breadbasket. I got a chance to meet him. And I remember when Huey Newton was killed. My mother said they got him. And she began to cry. My mother's not, as you saw from talking to her yesterday, she is not she is ready to fight always.
Yes, indeed.
But she said, you don't know. This government came after them with all that they had, and they just did not stop. And yet you have not been stopped. That's the wonderful, wonderful, right?
Yeah.
So tell me, um, you know what? I'm going to get Dwight McKee, and then I want you to close us out.
Okay.
Okay? I mean, because we've got to tell our children, because we were talking about this yesterday, Chairman Fred.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to teach the history. We can't let other people interpret the contributions and the work, the ongoing work of the Black Panther. We can't pay Black Panther Party. We can't let them do that. We're the ones who have to do that. Dwight McKee.
Yeah, what we have to do is, since he just create the narrative, we have to tell our own story.
Okay.
One of
How?
the great events of last year was the fact that they did a movie on Chairman Fred,
Hmm.
and that a lot of young people who didn't know the story learned from the movie that they had assassinated that this a reputable, profound young man.
Yeah.
And so, and I know a lot of young guys
Yeah.
now who see Fred as a hero,
Yeah.
Hmm.
who really didn't know his story,
Yeah.
who call themselves not young Black Panthers
Yeah.
because they acknowledge that that should be part of the story of their life,
Hmm.
that they should be serving the community and they should be protecting Black women and that they should be taking advantage of the Second Amendment, just like these white people are.
Mm.
So I think that we have to create more media, more podcasts,
Good point.
more movies to be able to tell the truth in our narrative. Because when our enemies tell it,
Mm.
they tell it their way and they tell their side of the story. And so you and I talked about yesterday how Everett Zimmer's Jr. them used to represent the FBI as a very positive thing. Uh, and he played J. Hoover like he was a hero.
Mm.
And the fact of the matter is, many of these people are vile and notorious and criminals themselves when you look at the real story.
Absolutely. And we must tell the real story. And we have the obligation to do that.
Yes.
We have the obligation to tell the story. And since you are a survivor and an overcomer and a thriver, boy, you were determined to get here anyway. And you were determined. And it makes me proud. Makes me proud.
Well,
So where do you feel that we need to go from here?
let me no, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on. Also, just to tap in some points that the key just triggered me to think about.
Mhm.
The whole it's so important, in regards to the narrative and even with the movie. I remember there were several attempts to talk about even doing a movie in regards to that. To Chairman Fred, and we had got word about it. You know what I'm saying? So initially we said no, so no go, and they got the receipts. We back and forth, and we are. I mean, some of the even initial titles were, were crazy. You know, I mean, just I don't know some of the initial titles, some initial script. We had some. We were fortunate to come across. They don't what we refer to as a dream team, back and forth, tug and pull, and then the respect of us to be on the set, the cultural experts. We had to go down there. We had to struggle I mean, of course, we said there's no perfect allies. There's no gift wrap revolution. People say, well, is this going to tell us everything about Chairman Fred? I said, you can't put a shark in a fish tank. Of course, you can get everything in there. But as Brother McKee, as McKee just pointed out, this tapped into the minds, hearts, and discussion of so many young people, just to have the conversation, and it opened the door, to the point in this ongoing relationship. In fact, this upcoming week, myself along with Cassandra,
Mhm.
I'm going to with the director of the movie Judas and Black Messiah, and also Daniel Kaluuya, who portrayed Chairman Fred. We said to go inside the prison in New York, and they're going to show the movie, so it's ongoing. And we have to have our ear to the ground, but again, struggling to keep that dynamic of self determination in place, and even be able to speak on our own terms. And That's what we have to do. We have to also have a study the people. What are they talking about? Good points about the podcast. That's what we have a weekly radio show we do called Freedom on Radio. But I did myself and a lady of rage. But we did a podcast. People can find it that touched on Judas and Black Messiah. It's called Judas and Black Messiah. And we addressed different inaccuracies, the different points of contention, all in the podcast. We're trying to get another podcast because that's what these people are listening to now. So we have to have constantly our ear to the ground, see what forms of communication, how these people dialogue with each other, take them, tweak them, and put that, as we say, put that Panther Cub peel in the applesauce.
Chairman Fred Hampton Jr., your father is so proud of you. And I say that in negative tense because he's more relevant today than he was in 1969, 68, 67. And we thank God for his example. You know, it's what a blessing you are. What a gift your mother is. What a gift your father and Mark Clark and your grandmother and your uncle, the Hampton family, and the whole Black Panther family. You all have been our gifts, and we thank God for you. I know that you have a home on this show.
Give thanks. I'm looking forward to coming back.
We got a lot of work to do.
Yes, indeed. I say roll up our sleeves. Let's roll.
Fred, I'm so glad to get a chance to finally meet you. Like I said, I knew your family, and I won your daddy's award, and it's one of the great prides of my life to having won that. Presented by your mother and your brother. I mean, your uncle, by the way, who was such a great guy. I loved him dearly, and
you know, as I wrap this up, and we can talk for a hot second after this, he loved your brother so, loved your father so, that he spent the rest of his whole life seeking justice for him. And I'm hoping that with the releasing of these documents by the FBI, I don't know if they've been corrupted. I don't know what condition it is, but I know that it is a big victory for defending rights and dissent. And they were seeking these documents for years because they said, no, we want William Neal's story to be told, this informant. We want it to be told. And we want this story to be told. We need to know.
Yes, indeed.
We need to know. And we can handle it. Because if we understand him and his story, we can understand people who try to sabotage the movement who are amongst us today.
No doubt about it.
I am Santita Jackson. This is AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Coming up, we're going to talk about the anger in America today, as evidenced by these. When you look at the social media posts following the assassination of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, these people have not been engaging. They've not been glorying in his death. They have been telling you how the private health insurance industry, the healthcare industry in the United States, how they have been betrayed and abused. They're telling you their stories. The corporate media is perverting that. But we're going to get the story right. These people are trying to tell you their stories. And we need to listen. Because too many of the bankruptcies in this country are driven by medical bills from people who already have the insurance. What's going on, everybody? Insurance doesn't give you assurance. In fact, it gives you not much at all. We'll talk about that coming up on the Santita Jackson Show. Chairman Fred Hampton Jr., Dwight McNeil. Much love. And as you say, much respect.
Much love, respect.
Absolutely.
Much love, respect.
Fred, I'm looking forward to meeting